we're going to talk estate planning for the next couple segments here, and it's about, preparing for life's curveballs, preserving your wishes, having a plan for those who come after you, right? And it isn't just about the size of your bank account or how big your house is. Alicia, let's talk about why estate and legacy planning are important, regardless of your financial situation. And when does it happen? When, a couple comes in and they're working on maybe becoming clients of Lehman Lewis, that you talk about estate and legacy?
Well, we're always talking about it, right? Even in that first visit, when we're getting to know you and kind of digging into what you currently have, and what's going on with it, how it's set up. Sometimes people don't have anything set up, and that's okay, but that's where we're kind of working towards getting the proper thing put into place. But absolutely everybody needs to have planning in that area, because if something happens, it's not just like you said, Bruce, it's not just about, who gets what and where does the money go and that sort of thing. It really is a lot to do with clarity and, care, honestly. Like, a lot of it is you have taken that and really put into paper what your wishes are. And it does bring a lot of clarity for the family, and it does just really lay out, but also it protects you in the event that, you need care for yourself, right? Because a lot of times those wishes need to be laid out that way. If there's a medical, whether it's a stroke or, something happens where you can no longer take care of yourself, having those wishes laid out ahead of time is just, it's imperative.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And Josh, let's face it, we've all heard stories that you and Alicia and the team at Lehman Lewis know these very acutely, because people might come to you after one of these things has happened. Because obviously when they're a client of Lehman Lewis, you've already dug in and really brought this to the forefront, so people are thinking about it. But you hear the stories of families just torn apart during the process of settling someone's estate, when they were, either they were kept in the dark or they just don't know what's there. So tell us about a few common problems that you all have seen arise when an estate plan is just flat outdated or maybe doesn't exist at all.
Yeah, this I think is really an interesting dynamic, and we've seen this play out a number of different ways. And I think, as a parent of kids, I know my kids pretty well. I think I know how they would react in certain instances. And I think we all want to think kind of the best of our kids, but just to be candid with us, kind of between us right here, you throw a little money in the mix, like people do some weird stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think you can see a lot of things sort of shift. And then you get the influence of, like, say, your kid's spouse or significant other. That's where you're going to see a lot of kind of pressure, where it might sort of shift things, where you're thinking things are going to go in a certain direction. And then all of a sudden your son's wife, kind of throws a monkey wrench in there. So we've seen that stuff play out, and it can be just wild, to put it politely.
But I would say even on the other side, like, and we've seen this happen too, where somebody came in and this happened recently. This is why it's kind of top of mind. There was this gal that came in, and her mom there were two daughters. So the mom had passed away. One of the daughters had come in and talked to us, and she said, I inherited my mom's estate because my mom just kind of said that I was the executive. Well, they didn't have it lined out properly. And so the mom put her on everything as the beneficiary. And now she's coming in to talk to us, and she's just like, well, I'll just give half to my sister because that's what my mom wanted, which is awesome. They weren't fighting or anything. But now she has the tax burden, right? So had we met her before that happened, we would have said, okay, time out. Like, we understand that your mom wants you to be the executive, and that's great. But this isn't how it should be set up. We wish we would have met the mom, right? So that we could say, hey, let's split this up, because it's going to be split up anyways. But there's just stuff like that where people don't realize, or another one, gosh, I could just go on story after story after this story, but, there was a couple that came in again after their parent passed away, and they were on their mom's house, and they didn't get the stepped up value. They had to pay taxes because they ended up selling it. And so they had to pay taxes from the time that she bought it. And she had lived there for like 45 or 50 years. I mean, some crazy amount of time. So it was an incredible tax bill. And we were just like, dang it. I wish we would have known you guys prior to that, because we would have taken you off the deed so that, you could inherit that at the stepped up value, and then you wouldn't have any taxes. And they were like, what? Here we thought we were making it easier. And they really hurt themselves on that. So there's a lot of things that we help people set up and do, so that they can, have their wishes laid out, but also so that they can make sure that they choose where that money goes and not the IRS. Because if you don't set it up right, the IRS really wins, and the IRS really loves that.
Yeah. So I think kind of key points there. Obviously, make sure beneficiary arrangements are up to date and they reflect how the assets should be passed on. Don't leave all your money to one kid to then divvy it out to everybody else, because it's not really fair, to be honest, because all that tax liability is going to be reported on their tax return. So make sure that's laid out. Probate, it's expensive. It's public. It delays everything. So make sure all your assets have a beneficiary tied to those. If you ever go into some type of incapacity type event, while you're still alive, that could lead to a court appointed guardianship. That's not something you want. So make sure your power of attorneys and that sort of thing are up to date there. And like we said, estate taxes, income taxes, those can be significant. So obviously when you're lining all of this stuff out, sometimes you can't avoid some of those taxes, but not having one kiddo of yours have to assume all that tax liability is going to be significant for them. So just making sure all of those things have been addressed. You've talked about it with somebody who knows what they're doing, and they can give you that direction. And I think that's a big part of that service we provide, is just sort of giving you direction. Obviously, it's your money. You get to decide where it goes, but you want to have a little bit of context so that you're able to make educated, well-informed decisions about that.
In fact, Alicia and Josh spent some time talking about it in their very own book, Peace Out, Retire into Your Go-Go Years. You can see that right there on the screen if you're watching us on YouTube or other social media platforms. In fact, on page 91, chapter 8, they spend 10 pages talking about estate and legacy planning right here. Yeah, that says, estate and legacy planning right there. So you can check it all out. In fact, they'd love to give you a copy of Peace Out, Retire into Your Go-Go Years. Just call and request it. 970-446-1234. We'll have one of the teammates just reach out, make sure they've got your email address or your mailing address if you're going to get a physical copy of it. 970-446-1234, or text the word KIT, K-I-T, to 970-446-1234. This is Retire Colorado with Alicia and Josh Lewis. I'm Bruce Steinbrock. And, we've talked about this a little bit, but, major points that people might want to consider, for those with a plan, for those who don't have a plan, and then just beneficiary designations. I mean, I know we've talked about that, but there's no real one-size-fits-all approach to this. It is individualized.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody has a different situation, and there is no cookie cutter plan whatsoever. And so, I mean, I would highly recommend, if you don't have a plan, both financial and your legacy plan, make sure that you're getting one. Start one. We can help you with that. For somebody who does have a plan, what I would highly recommend, update it and update it often. At least make sure that you are looking at how it's set up and that it is updated, because it really shouldn't be a set it and forget it. Even people that have, recent, we always ask, what's going on with do you have a will or a trust, and kind of dig into that. And, sometimes people are like, oh yeah, we've updated that. And we're like, awesome, great. When we were like, a lot of times we hear, oh, when the kids went into their 20s and they weren't kids anymore. And I'm like, well, how old are they now? 40s.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's still a while ago. We need to look at that and update
It feels
that.
like just yesterday.
Right. And time flies. So, and I'm not saying that it necessarily has to be updated every year, but absolutely, I would say at least every 5 years, right? That's kind of the max that I would encourage people to let it go without looking at it and updating. And then, just for everybody, also making sure that your beneficiaries are up to date, on 401ks and life insurance, if you have that, and just any investment that you have, make sure that your beneficiaries are locked in and exactly how you want it set up. And also, this is a freebie, guys, get a beneficiary deed on your home. This is a big one. I mean, that can bypass probate, and it names a beneficiary on your home so that when you pass away, they get the stepped up value of that, but it's there and it's already set up. It doesn't cost too much money. And these are things that we can help you with. So by all means, please reach out to us, because we would love to kind of walk through that with you and make sure that everything is set up properly.
And there are, tax things, and we'll talk about those coming up in our next segment. But again, Alicia and Josh would love to sit down with you and work on that plan. And one piece of that plan is the estate and legacy component. There are 5 parts: income, investments, taxes, healthcare, and legacy. Reach out, 970-446-1234. We've got more Retire Colorado straight ahead.